Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Ashish Fadnis, an orthopedic surgeon from Jupiter Hospital, Thane, and I would like to welcome you all for our next session or next screening of the Bombay Orthopedic Society Journal Club. And today in this podcast, we'll be talking about a trial which is called the OVIVA trial, which was published in the Lancet almost a year ago. So this trial is about use of the oral versus intravenous antibiotics for bone and joint infection. Why did I choose this particular paper? Is because this trial was lot talked about in the preceding 4 to 5 years while this was being conducted. Our understanding of the infections has undergone change, and there is a visible and a palpable shift in our attitudes toward treating these bone and joint infections in the community and in the hospital setting, which is moving slowly away from the intravenous IV antibiotics for a 6-week period. However, this trial was one of the first ones to be conceived, and there was a pilot study which was conducted, based on which they have conducted this particular study, which encompasses a large number of patients. So let us see what this trial comprised of. Let us see what were the strengths of this trial and what were the drawbacks of this trial, and whether I can apply this concept or I can apply the findings of this trial into my day-to-day practice. So this trial was a multi-center trial conducted in the United Kingdom. It was across 26 centers. The nerve center was Oxford, from where they had actually conducted these the pilot study, and the later on the studies, bulk of the patients were from this center. But overall, a large number of infectious disease specialists, microbiologists and orthopedic surgeons came together, and they were called as a OVIVA collaborators. So this was an open label study. This was not a blinded study. Now what does that mean for us is basically that the participants and the investigators knew which patient was receiving IV antibiotic and which patient was receiving an oral antibiotic at home. Why this was important is, during the course of their study, they found that it was ethically not acceptable to the investigators to subject the patients who were receiving oral antibiotics to a IV placebo. Apart from that, there would be different regimens which would be prescribed, and therefore the placebos would need to be administered in different doses, different formats, for different duration of time. So this was an ethical issue which the authors acknowledged right at the outset and decided not to do a blinded study, which is fair enough. We agree to that point. But this remains a bone of contention when you are critiquing this particular paper, that this was an open label paper. There was a parallel group of 2 arms. One was the oral antibiotics for 6 weeks, one was the IV antibiotics for 6 weeks. It was a randomized trial. Randomization was done well, randomization was good, and it was a non-inferiority trial. So what does a non-inferiority trial mean? A non-inferiority trial doesn't necessarily mean that the new treatment is at par or is superior or is inferior. It just means that the new treatment, in this case the oral antibiotics, is non-inferior to the IV administration of antibiotics. So there are some issues with non-inferiority trials which we'll allude to in the next few slides to come. The materials and methods were the inclusion criteria. They included all the patients who were adults more than 18 years of age after taking a valid consent. These are the patients who ordinarily would have been treated with 6 weeks of IV antibiotics therapies. For either they could be having acute or chronic bone and joint infections. You can see that they have very generalized, or they have pooled in all possible infections that come under the gamut of orthopedic or musculoskeletal bone and joint infection. They have not subdivided, or they have not segregated that we are going to deal only with periprosthetic joint infections, or only with fracture related infections, or only with, let's say, spine infection. They did randomize their patients very well. The participants were randomly assigned to the IV group and the oral group. Now what was found is that the IV group also received an oral antibiotic in terms of rifampicin, which was rifampicin. The oral group received initial IV antibiotics while they were in the hospital. So it was not purely an oral one. So as long as the patient is in the hospital, they would receive IV antibiotics, or they would receive IV antibiotics till the time the orals were started, which usually would be less than a week's time. The antibiotics were given after the 6 weeks to certain patients. This was permitted. So the study stops at about 42 days or at 6 weeks time. But there were some patients who required a prolonged antibiotic therapy, and these antibiotics were given, but these were not studied by the protocol. So this was outside the protocol. So to put it very simply, that the study was conducted up to 6 weeks in terms of adherence to protocol, adherence to the antibiotics, whether the patient is willing, whether the patient has any complications in the 6-week period, or he has any near misses or any issues with the medications of the trial. But if the patients were receiving antibiotics for after 6 weeks, this was not studied in the protocol. And there were quite a few patients in whom the antibiotics were continued even after the 6-week period. Now, how did they assess? And what were the endpoints of the study? So the clinical examination was carried out by the investigators. There are various patient reported outcome measures, and these were taken at 42 days, at 120 days and 365 days. So it's basically 6 weeks, 6 months and about a year's time. So they saw how many patients adhered to the treatment at 14 days and 42 days. The failure of the treatment was designated as if there was a persistent sinus infection by the same organisms, whether there were persistent histopathological findings. I mean, if you take the tissue from there, or let's say a non-Indian site, or let's say a joint, and there were the same histopathological findings that you would find 1 year back, then this was considered as a failure of treatment. So in all, they had 1,054 participants across 26 British sites, and around 8 participants per site, you can say, between June 2010 and October 2015. So now this slide gives you a brief gist. Now what is important in this slide is that initially they registered more than 2,000 participants were assessed for their eligibility. So out of which 600 participants were not eligible. But if you see the second figure over there, almost 182 had mild disease, and that could be treated with less than 6 weeks of antibiotics. More than 1,800 patients in the study had a bacteriological profile in which an oral follow-up was available. The next was, there were almost 30 patients who were really sick to participate. They had shock or other features of septicemia, which would require long-term intravenous therapy. So if you look at the breakdown, there are the patients assigned equally in both the equal number of patients assigned on both the arms. There were around 443 people in the per protocol analysis in the oral group as compared to 446 in the IV group. So it was fairly equally divided. If you look at the complications, and this table shows the serious or adverse event, you can see that the patients in the intravenous group, the one in the center, the serious adverse events happening are more or less the same in the IV as compared to the oral group, but they are quite a large number of events. So 77 or 76 out of 220 participants had some adverse events occurring within the first 6 weeks. Participants with at least one serious adverse events is about 146, which is about 27% of the IV group. So 27%, I mean, it's close to 1/4 in the IV and the oral group. So one of the highlights of this study was, for a prolonged antibiotic therapy, this group had almost 1/4 or 27 and 26% respectively of IV and oral group of patients who had some serious adverse event of any type. If you look at how they diagnose these infections, and generally in large majority of the case, they had taken 2 samples and they were positive for the same organisms. And this table basically shows how those sampling was done, and which is what is followed elsewhere. The microbiological pattern also follows a certain pattern. The staph aureus and the coagulase negative staph form the bulk of the patient, while gram-negative infections, pseudomonas were also common in the group, though they were much lesser in number. So let's come to the results. And so in this trial, with regard to treatment failure, which was assessed at 1 year, the oral antibiotic therapy they concluded was non-inferior to the IV antibiotic therapy. The subgroup analysis did not identify significant heterogeneity irrespective of the baseline surgical procedure. So whether debridement and implant retention was done, whether the implants were kept in place, or whether there was an excision arthroplasty or pathogen, these results were more or less sort of predictable in across all the groups. The oral therapy was associated with a shorter hospital stay, which was very obvious, and it had fewer complications, which was related to the IV lines and the obvious complication of intravenous administration of antibiotics. The authors deliberately made a generalized sort of inclusion. Therefore, it could be applicable to a wide variety of sort of clinical scenarios. There was no selection according to the organism, surgical procedure, or the site. So the benefits were, because it was generalizable, it sort of was advantageous. But if you have to look at a trial which is very specific, then it will go on for a much longer period of time. It would be more tedious, and then probably we would get significant results, but this trial would still be a long run, and it will be difficult to get those kind of numbers to prove the conclusion. The problem is, however, that the treatment failures occurred in about 14 and 13% of both the groups, which was quite high. So 14% of the IV group and 13% of the oral group, they had a definitive treatment failure at 1 year. Early discontinuation within the 6 weeks was more common in the IV group as compared to oral. So this is a sort of interesting finding. IV related complications were, as expected, were more common in the patients who received IV antibiotics. They did not actually make any comparison of antibiotics, but this was not an attempt of the original paper, though in the supplement which they have provided, there is a chart which we can sort of look into, where there can be some comparison of antibiotics that can be made. The serious or adverse events in this particular study was quite high, and this open label design sort of invites a bit of bias. The non-inferiority setup, which I mentioned briefly, was initially set up at 5%, which 5% anticipated rate of treatment failure. This was later on adjusted to 7.5%. But this original margin they thought was too restrictive. When they changed it to 7.5%, it didn't make much of a difference. But this change in the margin was done based on a consensus among the researchers, infectious disease specialists, and orthopedic surgeons, and it was a bit arbitrary because it's not mentioned how they have adjusted, whether they have used any previous precedents or the previous study to use it as a benchmark based on which they have adjusted this particular margin. The other criticism is that there is a significant crossover between the groups, and a large number of patients required, or they more than required, they received unprotocolized care before, or more importantly after the 6-week trial period. A lot of patients in their scenario received rifampicin, which again is a problem in our situation in India, because we tend to use rifampicin very sparingly, and we reserved it for tuberculosis. Here I would just like to make a brief mention of what kind of antibiotics were used. For the IV drugs, it was vancomycin in most of the patients, 41% of the patient. In cephalosporin was for about 30% of the patient, and the most commonly used oral drugs were actually quinolones and a combination of multiple classes. So the oral rifampicin was given in 16% of the IV, but in oral supplements or combination, rifampicin was given in about 50% of the cases, and this was not associated with treatment outcome. So if we look at certain subset of antibiotics, X versus Y, if we were to compare the oral antibiotics, so oral antibiotics, they fared particularly well against glycopeptides, or for example vancomycin. They fared particularly poorly versus carbapenems. So imipenems, faronem, these were superior as compared to oral antibiotics. So again, there is a bacteriological profile which comes into the picture, and which will help us choose which particular antibiotic. If amongst the oral antibiotics, we have to see which one performed the best. So the penicillins have not really performed better. The oral penicillin recipients' failure rate was higher than the failure rate for any patient who received an IV. So they had given penicillins, quinolones, tetracyclines, clindamycin, or other microlide antibiotics, and oral combination of various drugs. So amongst this, it was found that the penicillins are the ones in which the failure rate was slightly higher. So to conclude, the key takeaways were the oral therapy following the initial IV therapy for a few days. 6 weeks of oral therapy was non-inferior to the IV therapy. It challenges a commonly held dogma that we definitely need IV antibiotics, but now we should be asking the question that does this patient actually require antibiotics, IV antibiotics, and can't we give oral antibiotics in this particular patient? it is true that antibiotics can only be, some antibiotics are IV, but it's actually rare for a clinical scenario where an oral follow-up is not available. So if you go back to the figures, only 80 of 2000 patients had a bacteriological profile or a sensitivity profile which did not have an oral follow-up. So the bottom line is that in this particular OVIVA trial, the complex orthopedic infections, primarily in an oral treatment regimen, was found non-inferior to the IV regimen and had lesser complications and better compliance. So this is something which was important and which is a highlight of this particular study. Thank you very much.